Last month, we had the opportunity as a nation, as a world actually, to celebrate 50 years of walking on the moon. And I remember that as a teenager. Sorry. Yes, I'm old. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins formed a crew that went to the moon and walked on it. What an awesome thing. But I got to thinking about what it took for us to get there. What sacrifices happened in order for that to occur? I mean, there were some really, really crazy, brave people that made that happen. Now, what I want you to do here, Mike, is this is the new XJ4418YB test plane. We're going to strap you in this thing, put you in the bottom 727, take you up about 7 miles. Fire that thing off. We want you to go right up to the edge of space, and then we just want you to push that thing forward and head straight down. See, what we want to find out is just what happens when an object free falls from space, what kind of heat is produced, and ride's going to be a little bumpy. You might lose a wing, but Godspeed. And they got in the plane, and they did it. Or what about the theories that got us to the moon in the first place? Well, what we're going to do, guys, now we know how to get around the Earth, but we're just going to kind of get you out of that orbit, and we're going to send you to the moon. We got a real small window here, and if it's a little shallow, where you're going to crash. And if it's a little bit wide, where you're just going to keep on going. And they got in and they did it. Brave men that did crazy things. Some of them died, like Joe Walker and Tick Lilly and many others. And they lived in these bases in Arizona and New Mexico and Nevada. And they've lived in wonderful accommodations like a Motel 6. And the families would hear a crash and they'd wonder if it was Dad, and if it was, if he made it out okay. Now, I remember being in the living room of my grandfather's house during that time. And the adults were talking about astronauts. And my grandfather says, well, I met John Glenn once. Didn't like him. Met him at a family reunion, which leads to think that I'm related to John Glenn in some way. He says he was an arrogant son of a gun. I remember thinking as a kid, well, wouldn't you have to be somewhat arrogant in order to do that? I mean, And then last week, or that week that they were celebrating that, I like the Houston Astros. And I was watching a game, and Neil Armstrong's son threw out the first pitch. And then he went on, and he was with the people in the booth. He was talking about his dad. And he says, my dad hated the limelight. He didn't like it at all. In fact, my dad was on the board of directors for American Express, and they turned him down for a card, and he didn't say anything. That's how much he disliked the limelight. So that begs to say that probably you don't have to be arrogant or prideful in order to do those kinds of things. This morning we're going to look at pride, as Joel said. And when he said, I want you to do Proverbs, and I said, what are the subjects? And he said, and I thought, wow, how do you do pride without being prideful? Good question. But I love Proverbs. The Proverbs a day keeps the devil away. That one's for free. So this morning we're going to look at pride. What does it look like? It's God-given. I mean, it's God-given, but Satan twisted. And so how do we recognize when we're being prideful? Are we humble enough to admit it when we're being prideful? Do you realize almost any sin, personality flaw, etc., has some element of pride attached to it? Pride can be the centerpiece of all kinds of evil. In 1 John 2:15 through 17, we read this. It says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that's in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. And so we really see the three deadly sins, the desires of the flesh, what I want. Well, there's pride there, right? Or the desires of the eyes, lust. There's definitely pride involved in that. or just plain the pride of life. There's obviously pride involved in that. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to work an overtime shift at a fire station in North Portland, in St. John's. It wasn't my regular station. I knew everybody there. They knew me. We got along fine. And I'm on the truck. Now, the truck is the one with the big ladder. So you have the driver, I'm the officer, you've got the firefighter in the back, and then 40 feet behind is another firefighter driving the back. Best job in the Bureau. We all have headphones on so we can talk to each other, because obviously the tillerman back there doesn't have a brake pedal. So if it's stop, we gotta stop. And we're going along, and my driver kind of leans over and he looks at me and he goes, I'm the best firefighter in the city of Portland. And so I'm sitting there thinking, well, this could go really badly. Because, personally I didn't think he was, but I'm sitting there thinking, is this going to be an all-day debate? Is this going to be back and forth? And I said, well, I really have no criteria to evaluate that, but I would venture to guess that the best firefighter in the city of Portland probably wouldn't have to tell anyone, which got a chuckle 40 feet behind us. Apparently this was something that was ongoing. It's easy for us to become prideful. It's easy for us to say things that demonstrate that pride. Jesus had to deal with that issue. In Mark 10, we read just such an issue, starting in verse 35. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" Stop there. You think that Jesus didn't know what it was? He knew it was coming. And they said to him, "Grant us to sit one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." Whoa. And Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism which I am baptized?" And they said to him, "We are able." Wow. Doesn't sound prideful, does it? And Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those whom has been prepared." In other words, no. And when the 10 heard, they began to be indignant with James and John. Can you imagine? Who do you clowns think you are to ask that? Now, Jesus is probably sensing there's an issue here. So what he does is he calls them to him and said to them, "You know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you." It shall not be so among you. "But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many." You see, it's been alive and well for a long time, pride. But it doesn't just stop there. In Luke 22:24, the disciples are at it again. A dispute arose among them as to which of them was to be regarded as the greatest. Didn't get it the first time. And he said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors, but not so with you." Once again, we're going to do it differently. "Rather, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. For who is greater, the one who reclines at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who reclines at the table? But I am among you as one who serves." You see, he's trying to teach his disciples that, look, this is not about politics. This is not about being first. It's not about any of those things. It's about us serving. It's about us being humble. Now, Peter, not too long after this, when Jesus is talking about dying on the cross, Peter says, "Even if everybody else falls away, I won't." Jesus says, "Tonight before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times, and did. So pride has been alive and well for some time. Now, in Proverbs, there's a lot of different references to pride. Proverbs 8:13, "The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil, pride and arrogance, and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate." Ouch. Proverbs 11:2, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom." Proverbs 21:24, scoffer is the name of the arrogant, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. I don't want to be a scoffer. Proverbs 29:23, one's pride will bring him low, but who is lowly in spirit will obtain honor. But the one that spoke to me the most this morning was Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. If we're arrogant, we're going to crash. There's no other way around that. Remember the firefighter that told me he was the best? Well, shortly thereafter, he got in some trouble and had to resign or get fired. See, he wasn't the best firefighter because our image is just as important as what we do. But that's not all. What about Tiger Woods? Considered to be the greatest golfer ever. But yet his arrogant attitude toward his relationship with his wife, toward his body, where he trained to the point of utter destruction of his body, all those different factors destroyed his career. He can barely play golf today. Or what about from my area, some of you remember this, Muhammad Ali. I am the greatest. Turns out he was not. But think about our politicians who stand up and say, I've got all the answers. I got all the answers, just follow me. Or what about our movie stars or other athletes? We see blatant, arrogant pride all the time. But what about us? Are we blatantly arrogant? Are we blatantly prideful? Or are we subtle in that? So this morning we're going to look at different aspects of pride, how we can take that and turn it into humility. That's the opposite of pride. So if you haven't already done so, if you take out your sermon notes and follow along, we'll get started. I thought I'd go ahead and start with the one that has the biggest knife in my back. You can write this in. Pride says, I don't need your help. I don't need your help. I got this. I don't need your input, your opinion, your expertise, your ideas, your philosophy, your morals, your example. I could go on. I don't need your help. I'm good. I got this. Simon and Garfunkel had a song in the 70s that says, I am a rock, I am an island. I have need of no one and no one needs me. And that's a load of nonsense. Look to the person on your left. Look to the person on your right. You need each other. We all need each other. We're not rocks or islands. We need each other. Each year in the fire service, we have a chief's inspection. It's a white glove. The chief comes into the station. We pull all the equipment out. He takes a white glove and he goes around. He looks for dirt, makes sure everything works. And our captain was pretty new at the station, but he was a good guy. I was the driver, so it was my responsibility to get everything out. And we're going along, and so he'd come to the tool, and I'd start it and demonstrate it and everything else. And I knew the chief, and he says, Mike, he says, I know you know how to do this in your sleep. He says, Larry, why don't you start the Hearst tool? The Hearst tool is the jaws of life. Now, every firefighter, every officer is responsible for knowing how to use every piece of equipment. This particular firefighter said, well, the captain hasn't checked me out on that yet. Just threw him right under the bus. I don't know how to do that. We do that an awful lot of times. I don't need you. I got this. And when it goes sideways, we throw people under the bus, or we don't admit our mistakes. That's pride. We don't mean to be prideful here. It just happens. Sometimes we've been let down, or we just don't know what to do, and so we just say, I either don't need you, or I don't own up to the things that I'm shortfall of. There's a lot of different things that we all are very capable of, and some things that we're not. So for example, I can't weld. I can barely strike an arc. And you would just cringe if you looked at my welds. They're terrible. There's other things that I'm not very good at, but I have that get her done attitude where I can muddle my way through it, make it happen. And so a lot of times I don't ask for help. Or those things that I'm okay, I'm pretty good at, like you guys, I'm pretty good at those things. I don't really think about asking for help because, well, I can get it done. And then like you, we all have things that we're really, really good at that maybe few can do, or few can do as well. And so naturally, we don't ask for help with those because, well, we're kind of the experts, right? Which of those stances is the most prideful? A lot of times we point to those things that we're really good at. And we can be certainly prideful there. But I would challenge us to think about the first two. Because if we don't ask for help in those things we don't know how to do, isn't that really a pride issue? Or if we have the opportunity to have somebody help us or to teach in those things that we're good at and we don't take that, is that also being very prideful? You see, we need to use those things. I've had some health issues this year, some really rough ones. And to be honest with you, it was very difficult for me to ask for help for things that I was very capable of doing. I asked a friend to rototill my garden for me. I never ever thought that would happen. He stepped up and made that happen. And it was very difficult to ask for that. And that was all pride. That was all pride on my part. So you see those things where, yeah, I can do it. But what about those teachable moments? Parents, grandparents, when you have those teachable moments, when you can get something done in 10 minutes by yourself or in 2 hours teaching your child, take the 2-hour path. Because that is where you go past that pride. So what does humility say? Pride says, I don't need you. What does humility say? And you can write this in. It says, teach me. Humility says, teach me. You've got a skill. Teach me. So imagine taking a chance again and showing someone the reason you do it your way. Taking that 2 hours. Allowing, or so you can teach someday, maybe you can teach me. If I teach you, maybe you will teach me. Having that humility. Showing someone that respect that allowing them to teach you gives. It's not easy for us. It's not easy for us to do that. But it's so vital. Because as a whole, as a group, we're so much stronger than we are on our own. Jesus demonstrated this in Luke 9. And he called the 12 together and he gave them power and authority over all demons and to cure diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. And he said to them, take nothing for your journey, no staff, no bag, no bread, no money, and do not have 2 tunics. And whatever house you enter, stay there, and from there depart. And wherever they do not receive you, when you leave that town, shake off the dust from your feet as a testimony against them. And they departed, and they went through the villages, preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. Love that. There's a lot of applications for Jesus here. One is he didn't have to do this. Certainly, he was capable of going to the villages and preaching the gospel. 2, I'm sure he had some interesting conversations that weren't recorded here. Probably about halfway through this, Peter says, hey, Jesus, I've got this. I'm the rock, or I'm going to be. But what you see here is that Jesus sent them out. Some versions say that he sent them as sheep among wolves. But he gave them authority. He taught them. He told them what to do, what to take, how to act. Jesus demonstrated humility. My question is this: if Jesus had not done this simple act of teaching the disciples, would the gospel be where it is today? You see, teaching them so that they could take the gospel to the world when he went to heaven was vital. He needed to do that. So it's an obvious no that we wouldn't be where we were if Jesus hadn't done that. And what happened when Peter returned? Jesus says, who do the people say I am? And they had answers. And he said, then who do you say I am? Peter says, you are the Christ, the Messiah. That was revealed to him on his journey. We need to be humble. We need to teach. We need to do those things for each other. Let's play to our strengths, of course. What are we good at? What is our strength? Let's use that. Let's also teach. It's a thrill to teach, to see someone take the knowledge that you've given and apply it and use it as their own, in usually a new and different way, especially when you're dealing with kids and grandkids. So the second thing that pride says or displays, you can write this in, it says, pride displays fear of failure. Mike, are you saying if I'm afraid that I'm being prideful? No, not necessarily. There's a lot of different kinds of fear. If you're a fear for your health, if you're a fear for your life, that's not necessarily being prideful. But there's a lot of other different kinds of fear that are. There's many, many different forms of that. Have you ever seen someone or been that person who's absolutely could not make a decision, was so afraid of making a decision that they were completely traumatized, that they couldn't move forward? It happens. That fear of making a decision. Any kind of decision. Here's a phrase for you to remember. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. I have a friend, well, not really a friend, acquaintance. He was a dentist. And this was back in the 70s, and he quit the dentistry to become a minister. And he was a pretty good minister, but he says, I really suffered from fear of failure. He got a phone call from a friend that said, Theo, we want you to invest with us in this community thing we're doing in Eastern Oregon. We're going to call it Sun River. And for $5,000, you can get in at the ground floor. And if this goes the way we think it is, your investment is really going to grow. And he went home and he told his wife, and he's really excited. And she says, yeah, I think this is great. Let's do it. And he started thinking, well, man, this is a lot of money. And well, what if it doesn't go well? And what if I lose money? What will my wife think? And well, he didn't do it. Obviously, Sun River, I think we've all heard of that, has done pretty well. So years later, he went over to Sun River, and they were in the process of finishing the lodge. And his friend says, man, I'd like to have a huge mural on this wall of a mountain. Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, Mount Adams, some mountain. Theo, you know how to paint? Theo says, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And he started thinking, well, but what if it doesn't turn out well? I mean, everybody's going to come in. My friends, they're going to see this. What if it doesn't work out well? He was afraid, and he didn't do it. And he said later on he went there, and whoever did paint that mountain didn't do a very good job. He could have done much better. You see, fear can paralyze us. You've heard the saying, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. That is so true. Now, I stand before you today as a sinful man that has problems with pride, but making decisions is not one of them. I can make decisions. I made life and death instantaneous decisions as a fire officer almost my entire career. You put me on the sinking ship, you tell me it's going to go down, I'm going to organize it, I'm going to get it done. We're going to save this thing. And do you notice how quickly I went to be prideful? You see, even in the thing that we could do well, we can become prideful in an instant. If it's our decision to make, we need to make that decision. We need to make that decision. If it's been given to us, we need to do it. If it's not our decision to make, we need to help and support whose it is. If they're paralyzed by fear, we need to help them through that. We need to help them. When I trained young firefighters, On their first day, they got thrown a lot of information. But each one of those firefighters at some point heard this from me. Very similar. I didn't have it written down. It just kind of whatever the Holy Spirit said to me. But I would tell them about the expectations of being a firefighter. That you have an image to uphold. That you have a public that you serve. I would tell them about the expectations of Portland Fire and Rescue, and then I would tell them about the expectations of me. That if they were going to be successful, that they were going to do these things, and they were going to be this. And then I would tell them something similar to this. Because you have to understand that Portland Fire and Rescue hired 50 to 75 people every 2 years. 5,000 or 6,000 people would apply for those 50 to 75 positions. Those that made it were a little bit prideful sometimes. They'd been told they were the best of the best at everything else. And I would tell them, I despise arrogance. I demand confidence. There's a fine line between the two. You need to learn that line. You're going to learn how to do your job. And you need to do that with confidence. When it's your turn to lead, lead. When it's your turn to follow, follow. And if you can't do either one, get out of the way. Lead when it's your turn. Follow when it's your turn. And I believe that Jesus is telling us those same things. You see, arrogance and confidence are very close to each other. When we're fearful about making a decision, we can be very prideful. So what does humility say here? Humility says, let's walk this road together. Let's walk this road together. Imagine if we walked with someone who micromanaged and showed them a better way. Imagine if we had someone that was so afraid of failing that we helped them to make that decision. What that would do for their confidence. What that would do for them. Whenever Pastor Joel and I get together for any reason, whether it's to talk about church, whether it's to talk about this, whether it's to talk about that, eventually somewhere in our conversation we'll turn to baseball. Every time. We're both baseball fans. I love the Astros, he loves the Mariners, but we never hoard that over each other about who's better or worse. We make fun of each other's teams at times, but for the most part, we're very respectful. But what I love about baseball is that when you're out in the field, you're part of a team. Part of a team. We're a part of the team, a church. God's church, we're a team. But yet, when you're up to bat in baseball, it's one-on-one. It's you against the pitcher. When you're out there in that mission field, when you're getting that meal for that homeless person, when you're helping that person across the street, when you're doing something for someone, it's one-on-one. Just like baseball. In baseball, to be a successful hitter, you're hitting 300, which means 3 out of every 10 at-bats you're getting a hit. If you're a really good hitter, you're hitting 350. Means out of 10 at-bats, you're getting 3.5 hits. I don't know how you get a half a hit, but hey. And if you're an exceptional hitter, you're batting 400. 4 out of 10 times you're getting a hit. Hasn't been done since 1941, a guy named Ted Williams, who was rather arrogant, by the way. Let's turn that around. To be a successful hitter in baseball means you fail 70% of the time. You fail 70% of the time. Be a really good hitter, you're failing 65% of the time. Wow. When you look at it that way, that's kind of a whole different story, isn't it? We need to be willing to make decisions, not let fear rule. We need to be willing to go out there and do those things. We are saved, forgiven men and women. Amen? Amen? We are saved, forgiven men and women. What can the world do to us? If I stand before you and say I messed up the roof project, what is the consequence of that? It's okay, Mike, we'll get her done, right? It's okay. What can the world do to us? But Mike, I got a bad marriage. So is there somebody here in this congregation, your team, that can help you with that? My children are rebelling. Is there somebody here that knows how to work with kids that can help you with that? We're a team. Admit our mistakes. What can the world do to us? Nothing. Nothing. We need to have that confidence. We need to have that confidence. Jesus dealt with this in John 21:15. He dealt with this. And when they had finished eating breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. And then he said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, feed my sheep. He said to him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you that when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you to where you do not want to go. This he said to show by what kind of death he was going to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, follow me. When you were young, you used to dress yourself and go where you needed to go. But when you're old, you're going to need what? Help. We're going to need each other. We are going to fail. How many times did Peter fail? What was his batting average? How many times have we failed? What's ours? What's ours? We're going to fail. We need to not let fear rule that. We can't hide it. I'm reading a book. I apologize, I've forgotten the name of it. But it's a really interesting book about a young guy that inherited a church, more or less. And it was in the south side of Chicago. And he realized that he lived in the suburbs, but his church was right in the heart of the south side of Chicago. His wife, he says, we need to move there. We need to be in our community. We need to be there. And so they did. They moved in. And they basically hid in their house. The kids played in the backyard. They stayed in. The curtains were closed. And then one night there was, I think it was a shooting outside. And so he's met none of his neighbors. He's not talked to anyone. He goes out on the front porch. And what's going on? And the lady next door says, oh, hey, Pastor, how are you? He goes, you know who I am? Oh, yeah, I know your name, and your wife's name is this, and your kids are this, and you go to this church, and you guys have Tuesday night Bible study. And he thought he was hiding. He didn't think anybody knew. And somebody else went, hey, Pastor, you know. We think we're hiding, and we're not. So why are we hiding it? Why aren't we just up and saying, Mike, or I should be saying to you, man, I have this issue. I need help with it. Not just rototill in my garden. Man, I get angry sometimes. Can you help me? We need to walk together. Third thing, pride says, it's all about me. It's all about me. There was a Sermon Spice video that I was going to grab, and I decided not to, but it opens up, and it's a guy dressed like Elton John. And he's going up to his piano, and he's kind of waving. He starts playing the song, It's All About Me, or It's All About You, Jesus, It's All About You. And then he starts to sing, It's All About Me. We do that. Sorry, I know I shouldn't sing, but anyway. We say those kinds of things. We might not say it blatantly. Hi, my name is Mike. I'm chubby, you're not. It's okay to be chubby. Really, is me being chubby going to keep me out of heaven? Probably not. Or we say, hi, my name is Mike and I'm thin and you're not. Or, she's so beautiful, it disgusts me. Seriously? We do that kind of stuff though, don't we? It's all about us. But these aren't the only ways we're prideful. How about, I'm smarter than you. My IQ is like 492. and yours isn't. Or, I'm really, really good at politics. I got this down. Just listen to me, and I've got it figured out. Or how about, I'm stronger than you. If you put 14 Volkswagens on the end of a bar, I could bench press that. Or, I'm stronger than you. You can just lay the stress on me, and I can deal with it. I can handle it. Really? Is that a big deal that you might be able to handle stress better than I do? How about I'm a better Christian than you are? I pray 14 hours a day, I read the Bible 16 hours a day, and I sleep the rest. Is that a competition? How about I'm better at work? Man, if they would just put me in charge, I could make this company happen. I've got this down. If they put me in charge of the country, I could make the country happen. Or we just come up to people and we just display that pride by just saying, Joe, how are you? Joe, it's good to see you. Man, I haven't seen you forever. How you doing? I'm doing great. I am really doing great. I got Lauren a new car this year. A green one, Subaru. It's really great. We paved the house. We got a new roof. The dog's doing good. We built a tree house. We're going camping. I'd like to catch up more, but I got to go. It's been great talking with you, Joe. Seriously? Was that about Joe or was that about me? That was about me, right? I do this. Or you get, especially, I don't know if the ladies do this stuff, but you get guys together and we start telling stories. Now I've got a million stories. And so somebody's telling a story and you've got a story in your head and you can't wait for them to take a breath so that you can butt in and tell your part of the story, right? Well, do this. Who's that about? It's about me. So you see, we subtly, pridefully say we're better than everybody else all the time. So what does humility say about that? Humility simply says it's not about me. It's not about me. Joe, hey, I haven't seen you in forever. How's it going? Oh, I'm doing fine. Hey, you guys adopted a couple of kids, right? Man, that is awesome.